Look, I know what you're thinking. Free land in Australia in 2026? When a one-bedroom apartment in Sydney costs more than a small European nation's GDP? Yeah, I had the same reaction. But here's the thing. These towns aren't exactly handing you the keys to a beach house in Byron Bay. These are places so remote that your GPS gives up halfway there and just says, "Good luck, mate." Places where the nearest Bunnings is a 3-hour drive, and that's considered convenient. But before you dismiss this entirely, hear me out, because some of these deals are genuinely wild, and for the right person, they might actually be the opportunity of a lifetime, or at least a really interesting story to tell at parties. So let's dive into 10 Australian towns that are practically begging you to move there. And yes, some of them are literally offering free land. Just wait until you see what comes with it. Starting off strong, we have a town in the Queensland outback where the median house price is so low, it makes your morning coffee seem expensive. Picture this. You are scrolling through Domain at 2 in the morning, probably avoiding thinking about your actual life choices, and you see a 3-bedroom house listed for $65,000. Not $650,000, $65,000. That is less than a deposit in Melbourne, less than a year's rent in some Sydney suburbs, and your first thought is probably what is wrong with it, which is fair, because in Australian property, if something seems too good to be true, it is usually because the nearest capital city is roughly the same distance as Perth to Singapore. This particular town has a population hovering around 800 people, give or take whoever left for the city last week, and the local council is so desperate to attract new residents, they have started offering land packages that basically amount to a plea. Please, we are begging you, just come here and exist. The job market is interesting, and by interesting, I mean it is either mining, agriculture, or running the one pub in town that serves as the social hub, post office, and apparently also does weddings on Saturdays. The median income sits around $58,000, which sounds reasonable until you factor in that everything costs more, because it has to be trucked in from somewhere that actually has a supply chain. That loaf of bread? $8. Petrol? Do not even ask. But here is what they do not tell you in the glossy promotional materials the council puts out. The summer heat does not just hit 40 degrees. It camps out there for weeks like an unwanted house guest. And the flies, mate, the flies have a union, and they are very well organized. One local on Reddit described it as living on the surface of the sun. But the sun has pubs and decent people, which honestly might be the most Australian thing I have ever read. You will spend your evenings at the servo, because that is where everyone congregates when it is too hot to exist indoors. And you will know everyone's business within a week, because there is literally nothing else to do except know everyone's business. But this is important if you are the kind of person who finds peace in vast empty spaces, who does not need 17 different cafes within walking distance, who maybe wants to raise kids where they can ride bikes without you having a panic attack about traffic. This place might actually work. The sense of community is real. People actually help each other here, not in that performative urban way where someone holds a door and expects a medal, but in the "my ute broke down, and 3 neighbors I had never met showed up with tools" way. The schools are small, but the teacher-to-student ratio means your kid is not just another face in a classroom of 35. And that night sky, when you are far enough from light pollution that the Milky Way looks like someone spilled diamonds across the universe, that is not something you get in Bondi. Just be prepared for the fact that popping to the shops is now a planned expedition. And if you forget milk, you are having your coffee black for the next 2 days. The nearest proper supermarket is an hour away minimum, and you will learn to do monthly shops like you are preparing for the apocalypse, because driving that distance every week is not sustainable. You will have a chest freezer. Multiple chest freezers. This is non-negotiable. Moving down the list, let's talk about a town in regional Victoria that is offering actual cash incentives to relocate. Not land, but cold hard currency, which in some ways is even better, because at least you can spend money on things other than property you are not sure you want. This place sits about 2.5 hours from Melbourne, which in regional Australian terms means close enough to feel connected, and far enough that Melbourne people will not accidentally wander through. Population around 2,000, maybe a bit more if you count the surrounding farmland, and the council just approved a scheme where they will give you $20,000 to move there and commit to staying for at least 2 years. 20 grand. Just for showing up and not immediately fleeing back to the city like every other transplant who discovered that regional living means the Uber Eats radius does not extend to your postcode. Here is the catch, and there is always a catch. You need to be either starting a business, working remotely, or filling one of their critical shortage positions, which currently includes teachers, nurses, and, weirdly, diesel mechanics. The town's median house price is around $350,000, which is genuinely reasonable for Australia in 2026. But the rental market is basically non-existent because everyone either owns or lives in the same house their grandparents built in 1952. Finding a place to rent before you buy is like finding a parking spot at Costco on a Saturday. Technically possible, but requires luck and possibly divine intervention. The job market outside of those shortage areas is agricultural, meaning if you are not into farming or servicing farms, your options are the local IGA, the 2 pubs, or commuting to Ballarat for work, which sort of defeats the purpose of moving to regional Victoria in the first place. The community vibe is classic country town. Everyone knows everyone, which is either your dream or your nightmare, depending on how you feel about privacy. That cafe drama where someone's cousin's ex started dating the barista? Yeah, you will know about that by Tuesday morning, and you will have opinions about it by Tuesday afternoon, whether you want to or not. The local Facebook page is more active than most major city news sites, and infinitely more entertaining. Someone's chickens got out last week, and it generated 73 comments, including a full investigation into whether it was the neighbor's dog's fault. This is what passes for breaking news, but genuinely, if you are working remotely and just need decent internet, which they actually have now thanks to some government infrastructure program, and you want your money to go further, this is not a bad option. Your kids can walk to school. You can leave your car unlocked. The local pub does a genuinely excellent parma on Thursdays. These things matter when you are trying to figure out if you can actually build a life somewhere. The weather is that classic Victorian 4 seasons in one-day situation, which means you will develop an intimate relationship with your heating bill in winter and wonder why you did not move somewhere tropical in summer. But it is manageable. It is not the outback where the temperature is actively trying to kill you. There is actual rainfall, trees that are not just theoretically alive, and if you get desperately homesick for city amenities, Melbourne is close enough for a weekend trip where you can remember why you left in the first place, because parking cost you $40 and you spent 20 minutes trying to find a table at brunch. Then you will drive back to regional Victoria, where your mortgage is less than what your city friends pay in rent, and you will feel smug about your choices, at least until the internet drops out and you remember that tech support means waiting 3 days for someone to drive out from Bendigo. Next up, we are heading to South Australia. And before you joke about Adelaide being boring, these towns make Adelaide look like Las Vegas. There is a cluster of regional centers in South Australia offering land packages so cheap they are practically rounding errors compared with Sydney's property market, and some include building incentives. In short, they will subsidize house construction if you commit to living there and contributing to the local economy. That sounds great until you realize the local economy may consist of approximately 1 bakery, a hardware store, and a few vibes. The populations range from 500 to 1,500 depending on which town you pick, and they are all dealing with the same problem. Young people leave for Adelaide or Melbourne. Older people retire and eventually die, and suddenly there is no one left to run the town. The houses they are offering land for are genuinely affordable. You are looking at total costs around $200,000 to build a decent 3-bedroom place, which in Australia's current property market is basically mythical. But you are also looking at summer temperatures that regularly hit 45 degrees, water restrictions that make a lush garden unlikely, and a social scene that peaks at the Saturday night meat raffle at the bowling club. One local described it as peaceful, but you have to really like your own company, which is a diplomatic way of saying it is boring as hell, but at least it is quiet. The job situation is seasonal agricultural work, some government positions, and whatever you can create for yourself if you are entrepreneurial. Remote work is your friend here, provided the internet holds up, which is a bigger if than you would hope for in 2026. But here is what is actually appealing about these South Australian towns. They are genuine communities with deep roots and people who care about the place surviving. The schools might be small, but they are well funded relative to their size. Healthcare is basic, but present. You have a GP clinic and a hospital that can handle emergencies before airlifting you to Adelaide for anything serious. And the cost of living, apart from that expensive bread situation I mentioned earlier, is genuinely low. You can live comfortably on a modest income here in a way that is impossible in capital cities. Your kids can have actual childhoods, riding bikes to a friend ES place, playing in parks without supervision, learning to drive in empty paddocks instead of paying $2,000 for driving lessons in peak hour traffic. There is something to be said for that, even if it means sacrificing your extensive craft beer selection and having to explain to visitors that no, there is not a Good Guys within reasonable distance. The flip side, and let us be brutally honest, is that if you are not white, if you are queer, if you are from a non-Christian background, these small country towns can be challenging in ways promotional materials do not mention. Australia's regional areas are getting better, genuinely, but there is still a cultural conservatism that can range from awkward to actively hostile, depending on your luck. You will probably be the only whatever you are in town, which means you become the representative for your entire demographic, whether you signed up for that or not. It is exhausting. Some people find community anyway, push through, and make it work. Others last 6 months and go back to the city, where being different does not make you the subject of constant speculation. This is not meant to discourage anyone, just to be real about what you might be walking into, because the council brochures sure will not tell you. Now we are getting into the really remote stuff. There is a town in Western Australia, and I am being somewhat vague about specific names because some of these schemes change, and I do not want you rocking up to a town council demanding free land based on a YouTube video. This particular place is offering mining workers land packages that basically amount to free if you work in the local industry for 5 years. Fly in, fly out workers. This is your jam. The town exists because of the mine, and it will probably die when the mine closes. But right now, they need people so desperately, they are willing to bet on you sticking around. The population sits around 1,200, and the median income is absurdly high because of mining wages. We are talking $90,000 to $120,000 for entry-level positions, but the lifestyle is harsh. You are living in a place where the nearest city is Perth, which is either an 8-hour drive or a short flight depending on how much you value your time and sanity. The heat is oppressive, the landscape is red dirt and scrub, and the social life revolves entirely around the mine and drinking, sometimes in that order, sometimes simultaneously. The houses they are offering are basic but functional. 3 bedrooms, reverse cycle air conditioning that runs 24/7 and costs a fortune, and a yard that is mostly rocks and determined weeds. But your mortgage would be essentially nothing if you play the land package right. And that mining salary means you can actually save money at a rate that is impossible for most Australians. People come here for 2 or 3 years, live like Spartans, bank everything they earn, then leave with a house deposit for somewhere they actually want to live. It is a strategy, not a lifestyle. The town has basic amenities, a school that is surprisingly decent because mining companies fund education to keep families there, a shopping center with the essentials, medical services that can handle most issues, and a recreation center that is nicer than facilities in some capital cities because, again, mining money. But you are isolated in a way that is hard to describe to people who have never experienced it. If you want to see a movie that is not 6 months old, you fly to Perth. Want to attend a concert? Perth. Decent shopping? Perth. Everything is Perth or nothing. And after a while, Perth starts to feel like a mythical place you visit twice a year and wonder if you dreamed it. The locals who have been there for decades are either lifers who genuinely love the mining lifestyle or people who got stuck and made peace with it. And you can usually tell within 5 minutes of conversation which category someone falls into. But genuinely, if you can handle the isolation, if you do not need constant stimulation, if you are motivated by financial goals more than lifestyle variety, these Western Australia mining towns can set you up in ways that coastal living never will. You will own property outright before you are 40, You will have savings that actually matter. You will learn to appreciate small pleasures because there are not many large ones available. And when you finally leave, because most people do eventually leave, you will have stories about living in a place that most Australians could not find on a map and probably would not visit if they could. Plus, you will never complain about heat again because you have experienced 48 degrees in the shade and survived. That kind of perspective is priceless. Swinging back east, there is a town in New South Wales that is not quite offering free land, but is doing something arguably more useful. They are offering employment guarantees and heavily subsidized housing for essential workers, teachers, nurses, emergency services, that sort of thing. The town has about 3,000 people and sits inland from the coast by about a 2-hour drive, which means you get the regional lifestyle without being completely cut off from civilization. The median house price is around $400,000, which is not cheap by regional standards, but the council will help with your deposit and offer below-market rentals while you get established. The goal is to stop the brain drain, where every kid who graduates high school immediately flees to Sydney or Newcastle and never looks back. The job guarantee part is actually significant because one of the biggest fears about moving to the regions is, what if I lose my job and there is nothing else here? This scheme basically says, we need you enough to promise you will stay employed, which takes some of the risk out of relocating your entire life. The town itself is pretty typical regional New South Wales. A main street with the basics. A few cafes that serve surprisingly good coffee, because apparently that is non-negotiable in modern Australia, even in towns of 3,000. A couple of pubs. Schools that are decent, and that essential ingredient for Australian happiness. Access to a beach within reasonable driving distance. It is not on your doorstep, but it is achievable for a Saturday outing without needing to plan it, like a military operation. The community is that weird mix of old farming families who have been there for generations and newer arrivals who came for the sea change and stayed for the mortgage payments. There is definitely some tension between the real locals and the incomers, which you will pick up on immediately at the pub or the school pickup, but it is mostly harmless gatekeeping rather than actual hostility. You will hear a lot about how things were better before, how the old butcher made better sausages, how the new roundabout was a waste of ratepayer money, the usual small-town grievances that substitute for actual problems when life is relatively comfortable. The Facebook community page is a battlefield of petty disputes and lost cat alerts, and you will find yourself weirdly invested in both within weeks of joining. What makes this town actually viable compared to some of the others is that it has an economy beyond one or two industries. There is agriculture, yes, but also tourism, some light manufacturing, government services, education, and retail that actually functions because tourists pass through. You are not dependent on a single mine or farm staying operational. If one sector struggles, the town does not immediately collapse. That diversity, even on a small scale, matters enormously for long-term stability. You can actually imagine raising kids here and them having options beyond inherit the farm or leave forever. The schools offer decent programs. There are extracurricular activities, sports teams, music lessons, the things that make childhood feel normal rather than like you are being raised in isolation. The weather is manageable, hot summers, but not apocalyptic, mild winters, actual seasons that feel like seasons. You will get storms that are dramatic enough to be interesting, but rarely dangerous enough to be terrifying. The landscape is pretty, green hills, some actual trees. Nothing so spectacular it will make tourism brochures, but pleasant enough to look at while you are living your life. That proximity to larger regional centers means you can access services without it being an expedition. Need a specialist doctor? An hour-and-a-half drive. Want to go to a proper shopping center? 2 hours. It is not convenient by city standards, but it is manageable by regional ones, which is probably the best you can hope for. Let's talk about Tasmania, because of course there are Tasmanian towns on this list. One place on the northwest coast is offering relocation packages primarily targeting remote workers and young families, and the deals are pretty sweet. They include contributions toward moving costs, subsidized childcare for the first year, and assistance with housing through below-market rentals or help with deposits. The population is around 2,500, big enough to have actual infrastructure, but small enough that you will know your neighbors whether you want to or not. The median house price sits around $380,000, which for Tasmania in 2026 is reasonable, considering Hobart has basically turned into a mini Sydney in terms of property costs. The appeal is that the town is actually on the coast, and not the rugged, inhospitable coast that could kill you, but the beautiful temperate coast that might make you believe in God. You can walk to beaches, real beaches, not swimming pools pretending to be beaches or harbors full of jellyfish, but actual coastline where the water is admittedly freezing, but undeniably gorgeous. The town has a proper food scene, which sounds absurd for somewhere this small, but Tasmania's agricultural richness means even regional areas can access incredible produce, and people here take food seriously. You have bakeries doing sourdough that would hold up in Melbourne, cafes sourcing beans from Hobart roasters, and restaurants that are genuinely good, not just good for a regional town. The job market is tourism heavy, which means it is seasonal and can be precarious, but it also means there is work available in hospitality, retail, and services. There is also agriculture, fishing, and some creative industries because Tasmania attracts artists and makers who want lower costs of living without sacrificing access to markets. If you are working remotely, the internet is decent in town, less reliable in the surrounding areas, but within town limits you can hold a video call without it pixelating into abstract art. The schools are well regarded, partially because Tasmania invests in regional education, and partially because the communities are small enough that schools cannot get away with being terrible without everyone knowing immediately. Here is the Tasmanian catch, because there is always a catch. It is cold. Not Antarctic cold, but properly cold by Australian standards. Which means if you have spent your whole life in Queensland or New South Wales, you will spend your first winter wondering why you chose to punish yourself this way. Heating bills are real. You will own more jackets than you thought possible. The concept of rugging up becomes your personality. And while Tasmania is beautiful, it is also isolated in a way that is different from mainland regional towns. You cannot just drive to the next state. You are on an island. Leaving requires a flight or a ferry, both of which cost money and planning. That sense of being cut off can be liberating or claustrophobic, depending on your temperament and how the first winter goes. But genuinely, if you can handle the cold and the isolation does not break you, Tasmanian regional towns offer something pretty special. The natural environment is stunning in a way that makes you understand why people write poetry about landscapes. The pace of life is slow without being comatose. People are generally friendly in that reserved Tasmanian way where they will not be your best friend after one conversation, but they will definitely help if you need it. Your kids can grow up with actual wilderness in their backyard, learning about native ecosystems that have not been completely destroyed by development. And that seafood, fresh from the ocean, cooked simply, eaten while watching the sun set over the water, is not something you can get in Parramatta, no matter how much you are willing to pay. Getting near the end here, and we have a Queensland regional centre that is taking a different approach. Instead of offering free land or cash incentives, they are offering comprehensive support packages for small business owners willing to relocate. The town has about 6,000 people, which by regional standards is practically metropolitan, and it is dealing with the classic problem of retail dying because everyone shops online and the main street is half empty. Their solution is to attract new businesses by offering rent subsidies for the first 2 years, business development support, access to grants and funding, and a marketing campaign that is actually pretty smart about promoting the town as a destination. The median house price is around $450,000, which is creeping up because people are discovering the place, but it is still reasonable compared to coastal Queensland alternatives. The town is inland but close enough to beaches that it is not a deal breaker, and it is positioned between two larger regional cities, which means you are never more than an hour from whatever services you need. The job market is diverse for regional Australia, including retail, education, healthcare, agriculture, some light industry, and increasingly remote workers who realized they could do their Sydney job from somewhere their mortgage did not require blood sacrifice. What makes this town interesting is that it is actively trying to reinvent itself, rather than just slowly dying while complaining about the good old days. The council is young and motivated. There is community energy around revitalization, and they are doing things like creating maker spaces, supporting local markets, investing in public art and events. It feels like a place that might actually have a future, rather than just a past it is clinging to. The schools are good. There are legitimate extracurricular options for kids, sports facilities that are well maintained, and cultural programs that are more than the school play. And that is it. The community is mixed in interesting ways. Old-timers who remember when the town was thriving, newer arrivals who came for affordability and stayed for the lifestyle, young families escaping city costs, retirees downsizing from expensive suburbs. Finally, because every list needs that one entry that is slightly unhinged, there is a town in outback Queensland offering free land with a genuine catch that makes all the other catches seem reasonable. You get a quarter-acre block completely free if you commit to building a house within 2 years and living there for a minimum of 5 years. Sounds great, right? Here is the thing. This town has a population of 120 people. You will know everyone within a week, and they will know everything about you within 2. The nearest town of any size is 3 hours away. The summer heat regularly exceeds 47 degrees. The water comes from a bore and tastes accordingly. There is one pub, one general store, a school that services maybe 15 kids total, and a sense of isolation so complete you will question your life choices approximately 4 times a day for the first year. But people do it. People move there, build their houses, raise their kids, and stay beyond the 5-year minimum because something about the place gets under your skin. Maybe it is the night sky that is so dark and clear you can see satellites moving. Maybe it is the community that forms when everyone knows they are in this weird situation together. Maybe it is the complete absence of pretension or competition or any of the social pressure that makes city living exhausting. Or maybe it is just that once you have invested that much in a place, leaving feels like admitting defeat, and Australians are stubborn about that kind of thing. So there you have it, 10 Australian towns practically giving away land in 2026. The thing is, all of these places are offering opportunities that genuinely do not exist in capital cities anymore. Affordable property, space, community, and a different pace of life. But they are also asking you to give up things you might not realize you value until they are gone. Convenience, anonymity, variety, access, the safety net of options. Whether any of these places are right for you depends entirely on what you are running toward versus what you are running from, and whether you can handle the isolation, the heat, the flies, and the fact that everyone knowing your business is not a hypothetical concern, but a guarantee. Leave a comment if you have lived in any regional Australian town, and let me know if I am being too harsh or not harsh enough. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Maybe hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.